and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 325. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. You're so subdued. Hello. We do have housekeeping.
Yes, sir.
Which is me putting out a big thank you to Saturn, because my life has been insane the last couple weeks, and you were on vacation, and before your vacation, you just did all of the notes for these episodes.
Well, enough of the notes anyway. I was worried that I was going to panic about it the whole time I was on vacation, so I was like, shit, I better do it right now.
So thank you for basically carrying these episodes entirely. Because it's just been crazy at my house. It's a crazy town. It's where I live.
These things happen.
And so it's been
How's crazy
enjoyable.
town?
It's crazy.
That's good.
It's the worst. my poor wife is overworked. I mean, just to death. She's worked. I can't give details, but her company was bought by another company, and she's an accountant. And any accountants out there know how horrifying that is, because you have to merge accounting systems.
Right.
And so she's been dealing with that, and they're at like the deadline for it to happen. So she's working like more hours than there are in a day at this point. I don't even know how she's still functioning at all. So because of that, of course, I've been on, everything else, keeping the house running basically single-handedly for 2 weeks and
caring
with
for a child that is intermittently sick.
My child she's been pretty steadily sick for 2 weeks now.
That sucks.
But it's just been crazy around here.
Right.
Anyway, my week.
Aside from all of that,
I've been playing, and it's going to shock you, Saturn, so I want you to brace yourself. I've been playing a card game.
What?
I know. Did you know I like cards? Did you have any idea?
I did not.
I've been playing a card game called Flesh and Blood. It is a collectible card game. I know.
It's a weird name for a card game.
I don't love the name either.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's normalized to me.
Yeah.
The same way the first time you hear, "Oh, what game are you playing?" They go, "Magic the Gathering." You're like, "This is the dumbest name I've ever heard in my life."
It's still a pretty dumb name, I gotta say. It's been decades since I first heard it. It's still pretty dumb.
Let me tell you, you may not remember the card game explosion of the late 90s.
I do.
But okay, well, I have some old issues of some TCG magazines from then, and that's not even the worst name that was on the market. Like, by far, they had
I'm sure.
ways. I can think of, there was a way stupider one called Shadow Fist.
Yeah.
Shadow Fist.
Shadow Hand.
Anyway, it's this card game out of New Zealand by this little company, and it has kind of... I don't want to say taken over, because it's a tremendously difficult industry to take over anything, but it has made more headway in the short time it's been on the market than just about any other TCG I've seen since Yu-Gi-Oh!, I guess. I don't know.
Are you doing physical cards, or are you playing it online? Or?
Well, that's the thing, is the game is, they called it Flesh and Blood, and they allege that it is because, unlike how every other card game is kind of transitioning to digital right now, or the big ones anyway.
Yeah.
They intend for this to be a game that is played in person, in flesh and blood. That's their little tagline, right?
Why is blood necessary to play a card game?
Well, it's necessary to be alive, so they could just keep going. They could call it flesh and blood and bones and muscle tissue and probably some calories and some air and some water and a little bit of salt and electrolytes. The game.
Respiratory system.
Yeah, flesh and a nervous system. This is our new game. Anyway, all that said, their whole thing is that they're like, yeah, we're not looking to transition to digital. We don't want to do that. This is a physical card game. Now there are tabletops.
It's a weird time to release a physical only card game.
I know, and you know what? It has worked for them because they're just like selling out a product constantly. And so good, good for them. I'm glad to see a new exciting collectible game from a company that is not Hasbro. It's just this little company in New Zealand. They maintain creative control. It's not like owned by a big corporation. It's just really cool to see like a small team of creative people with a creative vision putting out a cool collectible game that is succeeding, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been playing by webcam actually.
Nice.
which probably sounds ridiculous to you,
Yes,
but in
it
the
absolutely does.
COVID world has become kind of commonplace for people who play a lot of trading card games. Is you just point your webcam down at your desktop and you play your cards there, and you just kind of do it that way.
Was it a webcam or a face cam?
It's right. I forgot Elgato and their face cam. I sent you the copy for that. I was writing about it for work.
So dumb.
The face cam. Because you can't take pictures of faces with other cameras.
Correct.
It's got to be an Elgato face cam.
Yeah, most webcams can only take pictures of webs.
But yeah, I've been playing that. I've been really, really thoroughly enjoying it. I'm real excited to play more. If you want to play with us, I do want to say we have kind of a little group going in the Board Game Barbarians Discord server, where we have a tournament planned, and we're all kind of learning the game together and getting some games in on Tabletop Simulator and via webcam and stuff. So if you want to play with us, come play with us. We literally are still literally learning the game. So if you're real good at it, there are other Discords you can play in. Not that we wouldn't love to have you in ours, because please help us get better. But don't expect any high level competition.
Right.
It's just
no grandmasters yet.
No grandmasters. No. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's just been really exciting. Honestly, kind of tracking it and following it and seeing its success, and it's just. I think it's just been a long time in the card game world since an unknown entity has come from a small team like this that has actually done something other than just flop 3 months later.
Right.
And it's 2 years in right now.
Oh, nice.
So it's a little older, a little more mature.
So when they said that it was going to be physical in person only, it was pre-COVID. So it's not as crazy of an idea as I thought it was.
Correct. And it was in development for 7 years. The dude worked on it for 7 years before he released it. But yeah, it's been doing good for him. It has kind of actually helped them, because most other card games have transitioned away from so much in-person events, right? Yeah. And they're like, no, we're just going to go whole. I mean, they took it easy for a while, but now they have national tournaments coming up in November that are in person, and they're getting good attendance. So it's real exciting. I am having to unlearn literally 2 decades of playing Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Which that's hard. It's
I bet.
I sit down and I have this every couple games. I'll sit down and be like, I don't know how to do anything. It just washes over me. I just forget, and I revert back to what I've been doing for 20 years.
Right.
But it's been a good time, and I'll quit gushing about it. But come play with us, Board Game Barbarians, which is the other podcast I do with Andrew about tabletop games.
One of the other podcasts you do.
One of the many other podcasts I do. Too many. Too many is how many I do.
Someday we're going to make you sleep for just a little bit.
No, that's okay. I don't do it anyway, even when I get the chance.
Right.
Anyway, what have you been up to?
So I had talked last time about the mode that I got, right? From my Saturn, the optical drive emulator. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about getting that replacement power supply for it. Mm-hmm. And I got it. And it's not a Genesis power brick that it uses like I thought it was. Uh-huh. It looks like a little tiny laptop power supply.
Oh, weird! Just like a little generic barrel jack kind of thing.
Yeah, and the adapter that I got for it is just a little tiny 60-watt power supply, and it just looks like a tiny laptop power supply. But I've got that plugged into the back of my Saturn now, and it is working just brilliantly.
Excellent.
The PSU that I got actually had separate connectors just for the mode. Mm-hmm. So that you don't just have to kind of plug those wires in where the rest of the power is going to all of the rest of the system and hope that it makes connection. It's got a separate little mode 5-volt power line. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that is what made the difference or if it was just that the PSU that I had before was failing, because once I opened it up, there was a couple of capacitors that looks like maybe they already leaked.
In the power supply?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
So, but no, everything is working great now. The audio is great. The system is working fine. I've been very, very happy with it. I also remembered that I had forgotten to add a couple of games to it that I wanted to add, like the fan translation for the first Grandia game. which was already commercially released on PlayStation, so I played it way back in the day. But
Right.
the Saturn version was the one that came first, so I wanted to see how that is, and it's really neat, and it is weird to be holding a Saturn controller while playing that, just because of years of playing it on PlayStation.
Right.
Also, because it was referenced on the Microsoft Rewards, they were given extra points for it. I did try out Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Oh boy, how many minutes did you make it? Because I couldn't. I made it like 20.
Yeah, I want to say it was between 15 and 20. So I
which
decided,
isn't to say it's a bad game. For me, it
No.
was like I got into it and I was like, all right, I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared for this experience.
Right.
This is not what I want. You know what I mean?
Well, I played around with it and I was just like, this is way more than anything that I want. I am.
It's
not
like
the
if you
audience
went
for
to
this.
Subway to get yourself a little tuna sandwich and they just gave you like a 3-foot tall chocolate cake. You're like, that's great. I can't do anything with this. I'm just not ready for this. I wasn't prepared.
For me, it's more like if I went to Subway to get a sandwich and they handed me a shit ton of dough and a pig. And they're like, figure it out.
You'll get there. Will
Yeah.
I? What is-
Maybe some just flour, just loose flour and a chicken. And they're like,
They
"Make
just
a
give you the
sandwich."
deed to a farm. They're like, good luck.
Yeah, you'll get there. So no, I did. So I decided I would try to pick areas familiar to me and see if maybe I could identify any landmarks or anything. So I decided I would take a flight from Dallas Love Field to Dallas Fort Worth International. It's a very short distance.
Yeah, what is that? 6-minute flight?
Well, it would be if I had figured out how to accelerate. Is really what I'm getting at. I didn't figure out how to increase my speed until I was already most of the way there. So it ended up being more than so I did play more than 20 minutes because it was nearly a 20-minute flight just between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So that took some time, and then I was coming in on DFW, and I thought I was listening to what they were saying, and I'm coming in for the landing, and I touch down on the ground, and everything looks happy, and I get the little achievement pop up that's like successful landing, and I'm like, cool, thanks. And so I just kind of I stop paying attention to it, and then the plane immediately flips over.
Oh no!
But I already got the achievement, and then I turned the game off, so I was done with it.
Right.
But it was neat, but way more than what I wanted.
You did it. You simulated flight.
Yay!
You achieved what the game had to offer.
Right. And then also I went on vacation, and before I did, we were talking in the chat about the Razer Kishi.
Yes.
The little adapter to use a cell phone, and it's just a little controller that you put on the sides of it. And someone in our chat had mentioned that they were having good results from it, and I'd seen plenty of people online, especially with Game Pass and Stadia and emulators, saying that it works great.
I'm excited to see what you have to say about it because I keep putting off getting one because I'm like, you got a Steam Deck coming in less than 6 months. You will never touch it after you have that.
Well, I had $30 worth of rewards at Best Buy, so I was like, well, that makes it pretty cheap. I'll give it a shot. And so I went up there and I got one and I brought it home. And the first night that I had it, I was playing around with just some Game Pass and just in-house streaming of my Xbox and just stuff like that. And it was great. It really handled and controlled really well. I was really happy with how it felt.
I feel a big butt coming on.
There is a big butt, a big old butt.
And then it exploded in my hands.
Yeah, so it works great for that. Also, I learned because I decided that I would test the latency since I had it in my hand anyway.
Right.
So I pulled up Stadia on my phone with Dragon Quest XI, and then on my laptop, which was also in my lap, I pulled up Game Pass streaming with Dragon Quest XI and just pulled the same game up in both places and just tapped the jump button to see that the latency is a little less on Stadia. It is a little bit faster.
Oh, really?
Not enough that you'll notice most of the time, but just a touch.
Yeah.
But then the next day, I decided I would put it through the real test since I was going to be taking it on vacation.
Of throwing it out a car window and seeing if it
Tossing it.
survives.
Actually, I hired a private jet to just
is that it?
throw it out from so I loaded some emulators on there because I was like, that's something I'll definitely play.
Right.
That's when I learned the D-pad is trash garbage.
Oh no!
Basically unusable.
It looks pretty goofy. Is it micro switches or what is it?
No, nothing is micro switches, which I was happy with because the last Razer controller I used was, and that really pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
But the D-pad is super slick, so it's really hard to get your grip on it.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, it just seems to register the wrong directions. And maybe I got a bad one or something, but I constantly was hitting diagonals when I was trying to hit cardinal angles.
Yeah.
And it was just completely ruining my gameplay experience to the point to where I would rather just have my phone dangling off of my 8-bit controller, which is what I've done in the past.
Right.
So I did return it while it was still in its return period because I'm not gonna play Stadia or Game Pass on my phone. I'm not gonna do that.
Right. So would you say for someone who was like, no, I want this just for streaming Xbox and or Stadia and or in GeForce Now or whatever,
right? Or
right
whatever the Amazon one is, or
Luna. Is it Luna?
I think so. And then there's also PlayStation streaming. I don't know if that supports anything but a PlayStation controller, but if it does support something else, this is great for it. If you're just playing more modern games that primarily use analog sticks, it's great. Good controller, feels good, very responsive. But if you're the type of person that wants to play a lot of emulators or a lot of 2D games on these newer services,
hard pass.
I would probably look elsewhere.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate, but that's where it is. But yeah, I did go on vacation and went to Florida, went to Universal Studios for a couple days. It was nice. It was most like the level of congestion in the park was still low enough that I think I encountered a line more than 15 minutes, maybe 3 times.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Everything else, I was basically able to just walk to the front of the line.
Right.
So I'm not a particular fan of Harry Potter, but they do have this massive Harry Potter section, and it's got a couple of rides. So I was like, I'll go ahead and hit those rides real quick just to, knock them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a few hours for my return flight, so I had to kill some time somewhere. And I'd done.
So you
all
might
the
as well
stuff.
Go watch Harry Potter drop the ring into Mount Doom or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that little Hobbit kid does. And so I go to the original Harry Potter ride that they had, the first one, and they're like, they have the single rider line open. So I'm like, well, fuck, I'll do that. So if you don't go to theme parks often, they now have this single rider line on a lot of the rides.
Oh, to like fill in the gaps in their rides with individuals. Okay.
Right. So if you're not going with a group of friends, you take that line.
Literal human filler.
Exactly. But it's a much shorter line and you usually get on the ride faster.
Right.
So I get in the single rider line, I go up to the front, and I hear this group of like, had to have been 10 kids, teenagers, so they weren't kids, but they're probably 15, 16 years old.
You're in your 30s. Everyone 25 and younger is a kid.
Is a kid now, correct. I'm almost in my 40s. I'm getting real close to people in their late 20s being kids.
Yep.
So this group of teenagers, they're like talking about how excited they are about the ride, and then they see me just basically walk past them to the front of the line in the single rider queue, and they're like, where's he going? And I get on the ride pretty quickly because there was an available seat, so they stick me on there. I go through the line.
Right.
And I went through the ride so quickly. It was basically just I walked straight through to the end, got on a car, and was done. That I was like, I'll do it again. Fuck it. And so I get right back in the single rider line, go to the end, and that group of kids is still waiting. And they are so pissed that I just lapped them.
Oh, God. You should have just kept doing it to see how angry they would get. Just over and over.
I did have one person recognize my my Bubble Bobble shirt. That was exciting.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
But that was fun. It was a good time. I was pretty panicked and paranoid about the whole pandemic and everything, but
right, there is that little
that
thing going on. Yeah,
there was hand sanitizer everywhere, and I kept my mask on the whole time and kept away from people. So hopefully I'm not dying now, but if I do, then we know what happened and we can blame
Florida got you.
Exactly.
That's what Florida does. It gets you.
It does.
Is it bad that when you said whatever that little Hobbit kid did, I'm such a Lord of the Rings fan that I wanted to go, hey, he wasn't really a kid, in Hobbit parlance. I just immediately wanted to correct.
Well, I was referring to Harry Potter as that.
I know, but yeah. Anyway,
little Hobbit kid. Anyway.
Let's do some news. First up, Hidden Palace archived and made available 349 Xbox prototypes and 135 Dreamcast prototypes as part of Project Deluge. What an appropriately named project.
Right.
Several of the Xbox prototypes are seemingly complete games that only released on PS2 or GameCube, like Pac-Man World Rally and He-Man Defender of Grayskull.
Yep. And that last one, the He-Man game, it didn't come out at all in North America.
I was going to say, I don't remember that one coming out.
It came out in Europe on PS2, but it was all North American releases were canceled because TDK got out of the video game business.
Yeah. The artist behind the Western covers of games like Street Fighter II and Streets of Rage 2, Mick McGinty, has passed away.
That's unfortunate.
That's unfortunate.
Some of that art is really iconic, too.
I love that Street Fighter 2 cover with Blanca just like wailing on everybody. I love
he looks enormous, too.
I know. I love that he made Blanca the main character. He's like, obviously, this guy's the main character.
Yeah.
I mean, man in karate uniform? No, thank you. Give me green electricity demon. Thanks.
And I love how trepidatious Chun-Li looks on the cover, too.
Yeah, she's like, what the fuck?
She's like, do I really want to get in Blanca's world there?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go home. I don't... Disney re-releasing their recent classic games collection, adding The Jungle Book and Capcom's SNES version of Aladdin.
Yeah, so the original had Aladdin and The Lion King, but it was just the Virgin Interactive versions.
Yeah.
And so now this one has the Capcom Aladdin as well.
Excellent. They can just take all those games I don't want to play and put them all in one big collection, and then I don't have to worry about it. Strictly Limited / INN games.
I think it's INN.
Announced more Cotton games coming to Western Shores, including Cotton Guardian Force Saturn Tribute, which is a collection of Cotton 2, Cotton Boomerang, and Guardian Force, Cotton 100%, and Panorama Cotton. How many don't get me wrong, this is great, but slow down. Just pace yourself.
It's mostly just re-releases of classic games. Panorama Cotton was, I want to say, Genesis exclusive and is very expensive.
They're releasing games like they're cutting off games at the end of the year. They're like, no more games.
2021 was the last year of video games.
We got to get them out the door. Billy Mitchell failed to renew the registration for PerfectPacman.com. The new owners have set it up as a page to discredit Mitchell's claims.
That's so great.
Fantastic. Did you watch I think we talked about it on the show, the video of him, the judge dismissing his case? That was on YouTube. Oh, man.
So good.
The judge was like, you have no case. And he's like, well, I'm really disappointed. And I'm like, we are all disappointed, Billy. Just go on. Go on. Get. Pokemon, speaking of TCGs, Pokemon TCG Online will shut down in preparation of the release of the new Pokemon TCG Live. And most of your stuff will transfer, but not all of your stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks for spending all that money on the internet cards, because they're gonna put you in some new software now.
Maybe.
I won't get on my tangent, but part of the reason I don't like digital card games is shit like this.
Yeah, the actual ownership of your cards.
Yeah, like when you buy a card in real life, I said I wouldn't do it. I'm doing it. I can't resist. You buy it's just frustrating. It frustrates me. I'm like, if I buy a card, I've got the card. I've got it for forever. It never goes anywhere. I don't want to have to deal with we're transitioning to a new platform. I want to be like, good, I don't care. It's in my hand. What do you take it away from me?
I like to imagine the physical card games like we're transitioning to a new platform and there's just a second platform right next to them.
It's just a different table.
They're like,
everyone move over there. And you're like, no.
It's a new platform, everyone.
I won't. I mean, granted, games go through different editions and things get weird sometimes. But, at least in the physical space, if you have all your old stuff, you can still relive that era of, whatever it is.
Right.
Microsoft adds a Halo theme to the Microsoft Solitaire collection because they won't remove the ads, but here's a new theme.
Well, you get rid of the ads if you have Game Pass.
That's true. I need to get that all working on my stuff. Does it work on the mobile version?
It does. As long as you're on Android or iOS. It does not work on Windows Phone.
I wish they would add... God damn it. I wish they would add Wordament to Game Pass, because that's a fun game. I play it at home, but if I'm out and about, I get the ads.
Yeah, it sucks.
Because my Pi-hole blocks the ads because Microsoft doesn't even know how to do good ads.
I know, it's so great.
A Nintendo Direct happened. So we're just going to fire through some of this. First up, Monster Hunter Rise expansion announced for 2022. Monster Hunter Rise also confirmed for Steam release. I think it's January.
That sounds right.
I won't gush about that, but Monster Hunter Rise is great. If you've been waiting for the Monster Hunter to start the franchise on, it's that one, bar none. Mario Party Collection on Switch. Yoko Taro card-based JRPG by Square Enix coming to multiple consoles. I can't wait for this. It's
There's
cards.
A demo.
It's
Did
weird.
You download it yet?
I have not yet. No. I've been busy with real-life cards.
That's true.
So I've not downloaded this card-based JRPG.
Right, but Yoko Taro is just such a weirdo that it almost makes me want to try it, but then there's all those cards, and that just turns me away.
Yeah. I don't know why you hate little rectangles of cardboard so much, Saturn. I'll never know. New Chocobo racing game called Chocobo GP that appears to be Switch exclusive and looks pretty good.
Oh, I'm so
looks
ready
fun.
for it.
First ever 3D Kirby game announced for early 2022 release called Kirby and the something something. Forbidden Kingdom? Is that right?
Something like that. I just remember that there's all these dilapidated buildings and everything, and I saw somebody on the internet say, "Oh, look, it's Kirby in Near Automata Land." And I love that idea.
It looks fun. I'm excited for it. Yeah. I'm not going to love paying $60 for it, but I hope that it's like a Super Mario Odyssey level adventure, because that's always my thing with Kirby games is I like them, but it's like I like $40 like them. It's usually like, yeah, man, you'll kill a weekend with this new Kirby game.
And I feel like they've kind of phoned in the last couple of Kirby games a bit. They've not really innovated much at all. It's just been kind of
more Kirby. Yeah.
Right.
Animal Crossing Direct and Final Smash Ultimate revealed to be in October. Project Triangle Strategy given the final title, Triangle Strategy.
This is what we all expected to happen.
What a stupid name for a game that looks real fun.
Right?
Hopefully that name gets fucking normalized. Holy shit. Triangle Strategy?
Oh, that's so dumb.
Oof. They need to quit letting the gameplay design team name their games is the problem. Because I get that the whole thing is that it's like this triangle of strategy, like rock, paper, scissors strategy thing. But that's some shit that the gameplay design team came up with. They're like, what are you calling it? They're like, well, it's a strategy game. We have this triangle system, so we're just calling it like Triangle Strategy, And they're like, great. Well, no, but you should go talk to like marketing or the people that do it. No, we're good. We're good. So we're gonna call it Triangle Strategy.
Like the marketing team not involved. The story, the writing team not involved.
No. Triangle Strategy starring man in Fantasyland
and his love interest.
Lady love interest.
Also, character 2 is here.
And animal companion.
But watch out for bad guy. He's a bad guy.
You ain't gonna like him at all. N64 and Genesis being added to Nintendo Switch Online as part of their new premium tier, which they've not announced pricing for. But let me quell some interesting discourse I've seen about it. It is going to cost more money.
Yes,
I've seen a lot of people be like, is it gonna? We don't.
Yeah,
it will. It's going to cost more money.
They said definitively it will cost more because they said prices to be announced.
Yeah. They're making controllers, N64 and Genesis controllers, $50 each. Oof. The American Genesis controller is 3-button. Japan is getting the 6-button Mega Drive pad. Mm-hmm. For the $50 for a functioning USB-C rechargeable OEM quality N64 controller, I am down 1,000 times. I'm going to buy that controller. $50 for a 3-button wireless Genesis pad. Why would I not get 2 M30s, which are superior controllers?
Or even the Retrobit controller.
Also true.
Theirs is fine. And compatible.
Also, Castlevania Anniversary Collection confirmed, released on all consoles, includes Circle of the Moon, Aria of Sorrow, and Harmony of Dissonance. Did I get all those names correct?
Yes, and also Castlevania Dracula X, the Super NES quasi-port of Rondo of Blood.
Yes, I like that one. That one's fun.
Why?
It's not horrible. It's fine.
Pretty horrible.
I'll play that before I'll play Castlevania 4. I'll say that. I'll put it out there. People are going to get angry now. I like how you're thinking. You're like, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I put both of those about even.
ActRaiser Renaissance, kind of surprised announced, released on everything except for Xbox. Yeah. And it's, we've both been playing it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about it as things go on.
And finally, the Mario movie cast information revealed. And I'm just going to fire through them. And if you haven't heard it, you're going to go, what the fuck, every time I say everything. First off, Chris Pratt as Mario. Charlie Day as Luigi.
Yeah.
Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach.
Yeah.
Jack Black as Bowser. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad.
Yeah.
Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong. And others. Charles Martinet, who has been the voice actor Martinet, who has been the voice actor for Mario for over 20 years now.
Mario and friends, really.
Yeah. We'll have surprise cameos. I suspect he's going to be Spike. That's my speculation.
No, Spike was already cast.
Was he?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but it was,
bummer.
It was some actor I'm not familiar with.
That was my guess, as he was going to be Spike.
They showed it in the presentation. They showed Spike.
I was too busy freaking out about all the other ones. It's I mean, I don't know, weird. The only one that I'm like, okay, yeah, is Jack Black. Like that guy has a lot of range. I could see him playing like a big monster character. I'm okay. That's the only one that I'm like, all right, yeah, I get that. That's fine. The rest of them, okay. Right. I guess.
We were talking when I was at Universal, because Universal's about to be making that Super Nintendo World thing, right? And they've already got a Jurassic World ride that has Chris Pratt in the little video while you're in line.
Yeah.
And then they also have their Marvel area. So if they did something Guardians themed, they could have Chris Pratt over there too. And then when they make the Super Nintendo World, they can just have Chris Pratt over there too. They can just fill the park with Chris Pratts.
I feel like I'm inundated with Chris Pratt between Square Enix refusing to not show me Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, every 5 minutes.
Yeah, but he's not in the game.
Right, but it still makes me think of him, you know. And then he's in all the Jurassic Park movies. He's in the Marvel movies. He's Mario. Like it's like the universe is like, you better like him. And I'm like, I guess. Let's get into the topic at hand. This week we are talking Tose.
Yes.
Which is that company that they don't want you to talk about them.
Right.
They would prefer it if you didn't bring them up.
Yeah, this was a hard one to research. Let me just say that.
I love that the week that I'm like, oh man, Saturn, thanks for doing all the research. I picked this topic, and then I bailed on it and was like, I guess you got to figure it out. On the week you had a vacation. So we're talking Tose. There's a good chance you haven't heard of Tose.
Right, but you will.
You will shortly. They were founded in November 1979 in Higashiyama-ku, Kyoto, Japan.
I just love hearing you pronounce.
I don't know if you know this. Every Japanese word has question mark on the end of it. So obviously that's how I read them.
That's how they write things when they translate them to English-style characters. They just always put a question mark afterwards.
Estimated to have about 1,000 employees as of 2015, because that's the most recent metric we have about these shady individuals.
Yep.
And first encounters, Tose was one of those companies that, like, I hear Tose mentioned, but I'm always like, what do they do? Do they do, no? Well, maybe. And then you look them up on Wikipedia, and even Wikipedia is like, we don't really know what they did. It's like if Way Forward never put their name on anything.
Right.
Because for people that don't follow Way Forward's B tier, their B-sides, right? When they're not making the shit they like making, they go make tons of licensed trash.
Right.
And that's how they pay for their dream projects. Tose has taken the same strategy, except they don't seem to take a break to make their dream projects. They just keep making stuff for other people.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah, and so the company that I work for is very similar to Tose, but in every other industry but video games, essentially.
Yeah.
And even then, we kind of touch video game hardware too. We're just a hardware company, but we never put our name on everything. It's always just the partner's name on it. We don't take credit for it. We don't want credit for it. You just pay us to do the work. We make it. We push it out the door. And that's kind of what Tose does too. And when I first heard of Tose years ago, I was like, that's the dumbest idea ever. Why would anybody want to just do a lot of grueling work and never get credit for it? And now that I work at a company that's basically the same way, I'm like, I still don't get it. It still doesn't make any sense to me.
So as far as first encounters, I don't know that I've had one yet. Because they're just so weird and reclusive, I suppose. Saturn, tell me a little bit about the history of Tose as a company and where they came from.
Yeah, so fortunately, their website, and they do have a public-facing website, so that's helpful.
Do. Yeah, I went there.
Right. It does have some history information that they made available. However, it also has some just really awkward localization of that history. So I tried to find as many additional sources as I could for as much of this as I could. So it started with a company called Toei Saiko, which was a Japanese design and manufacturing outsource firm, which is the same as the kind of company that I work for. It's a design and manufacturing outsourcing firm. And they had been contracted by Taito to help produce Space Invaders cabinets to keep up with demand, because Taito couldn't make them all themselves. And so a lot of the Space Invader cabinets were actually made by this Toei Saiko company. It just still has Taito's name on it because that's how business works.
Right.
And because they were working with Taito on that, they saw how much business there was in the video game industry. And rather than doing what most companies would do and being like, let's get a piece of that, they instead split off an entire separate unrelated company that they kept almost no ownership of and let that do it.
I mean, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the one just doing the work for everybody else, you're not assuming any risk for how these intellectual properties do. You take your contracts, you do them, and if tomorrow Space Invaders flops, which, you know, it didn't, but if tomorrow it's like, oh yeah, it flopped, you're like, okay, well, I guess we'll go find a new contract. That sucks for Taito. Sucks for you guys.
Sucks that you guys are sitting on all those cabinets we made anyway.
So they get the money, and they don't have to deal with any fallout from, you know, market forces being what they are. Like, from a business perspective, I get it.
However, for the employees, it's difficult to cite that on a resume unless the company you're applying for has done business with that company, because you can be like, oh, I worked at this company for decades. They're like, I don't know who that is. Oh, well, they're a giant company. No, I've never heard of them.
Are you sure?
Right.
That they are? Yeah. I interviewed for a ghostwriting position one time.
Yeah.
To write the memoirs of this, like, DFW business tycoon type. You know, I don't remember what business he was in. Something stupid, and I don't know that I can legally say either. Right. And it was the weirdest interview, because the whole time it was one of my earlier, you know, attempts at a writing gig. Yeah. And I was like, so can I put this on a resume? You know, it was only like a 6-month contract. Right. And then supposedly the book would be done, and you'd be working on a team with other ghostwriters writing this dude's memoirs, that I assume would be delivered to us via drunken monologue. I don't know. And I just remember being like, so when I'm done, what do I put on my resume? And they're like, not this. Like... So it's weird. I can't. I feel bad for these Tose employees now.
Right.
Like, so, you could never quit. You'd be like, what'd you do? Well, I worked for this company. What did they do? Things. They did things. You know, Space Invaders. Can't tell you what we did, but Space Invaders.
That's so much of my job is that. Anytime, like, my job personally, I'm just IT, so I don't do anything important. But anytime,
your company.
Anytime somebody's like, well, what does that company do? Can't really tell you. Well, what? Why? Well, our partners have signed us to contracts that says that we can't.
What does your company do? Makes products.
Yeah.
Which products? Ones that are you buy.
We work in the business industry. we do businesses.
Makes me think of that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie Day, who's going to be playing Luigi,
Luigi,
to tie this all back, gets a job at another character's, you know, his business that he started, his like big multi-billion-dollar business, and he's like, trying to learn about it and get good at doing businessy stuff. He's like, so what do we make? And he was like, money. He's like, well, no. What do we produce? Wealth. Like there was, so there you go. Your business produces wealth, Saturn.
Yeah, pretty much. So they split off Tose to be a new company. That was back in 1979. Yeah. And at first it just made physical arcade games. They weren't part of development or programming or any of that. And it only had 5 employees. So you had 5 people just producing physical arcade machines, and that was a business in 1979.
Gosh.
Mostly Space Invaders machines. But as the Space Invaders craze started to eventually wind down, Tose decided that they would move to development rather than production. And some of those first employees are still there at Tose, and recently they have finally started to do interviews. I was able to read a Famitsu interview with one of the founders of the company, which is where a lot of this information comes from. But even then, most of his answers to the Famitsu interview were, we won't talk about that. or this is the answer and you cannot print it. So a lot of the article was like, in parenthesis, we can't tell you what we saw here, but it was amazing. But yeah, so they did start working on development. Their first publicly acknowledged original project was a game called Sasuke vs. Commander, which was an arcade game that SNK put out in 1980. Mm-hmm. It is believed that they probably did something before that, but you have no idea.
Who knows?
They won't tell us. And then in 1984, Tose started working on games for the Famicom or NES. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to develop for the platform because a lot of the arcade games they're working on, like those ones with SNK, were being built on the same 6502 CPU as the NES used. So they were already very familiar with the hardware. And they did eventually expand the scope to other platforms as they became viable. Throughout the 80s, Tose had developed working relationships in private with a bunch of publishers. The ones that I was able to find, they acknowledged some like list of 50 of them. But among them, SNK, Bandai, Tomy, Jalico, Taito, Namco, Tonkin House, and Enix. They were all producing games.
Who could forget Tonkin House?
Tonkin House put out a lot of the ports of Falcom's games to console.
Did they?
I always remember the Tonkin House name at the beginning of Ys 3, and I was like, that's the stupidest fucking name for a company.
It's like what they would call it if Tonka Toys merged with Toll House Cookies.
Yeah, or Random House, the CD company.
Oh yeah, good call.
Yeah. So yeah, in May of 1991, they formed a division called Tose Software of America, which was designed aiming and establishing local procurement, sales route exploration, and development system in USA.
That is possibly the most vague description of anything I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that was the quote they had.
Leave it to Tose to be masters of saying lots of things, but also nothing.
Right. And then I also got this quote where they had mentioned that same division was dissolved in April of 1993 because, quote, the overseas electronic game market collapsed. I don't recall that happening in 1993.
It did? In 1993?
I feel like I was there in 1993, and I don't recall the non-Japan electronic game market collapsing. I feel like I would have noticed that.
Well, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, they later made Chinese offices in Shanghai and Hangzhou. Those were in 1994 and 2001, respectively. In March of 2003, they opened a new U.S. office, which was established in, quote, American California.
Is there any other brand? Come on.
They opened that branch to aid in European and North American development and localization, and that division was again dissolved in June of 2013.
Oh, really? The division opened to help with localization in American California was dissolved?
Who would have thought? They moved all that staff over to the Philippines, where they now do their localizations in not American Philippines. And then I saw
this is how Americans view the world.
Right.
Over in not American Canada, like down here in American Idaho,
we do things different than they do in not American Uruguay. So in early 2012, I got this. Sorry, I was reading the wrong part. In early 2012, they published a game called Susume Tactics on PSP and just on PSN in North America. It was digital only. But it was the first and so far only time they've ever published a game. In all of their decades, since the late 70s, they've developed potentially thousands of games.
Right.
Their name is on very, very few of them, but they published one. And that's just so strange.
I want to know. It's got to be that, like, the publisher fell through or something, and they were almost done with the project, and they were like, well, we'll just buy the rights, and we'll put it out and make
Here's the thing. In Japan, it was published by someone else. It was only outside of Japan that Tose published it themselves.
Maybe it was a localization thing. Maybe they localized it, but the Japanese company didn't have the rights to release it internationally, and Tose did because they have American branches. That's the only thing.
They were still in American California then.
Or maybe they just really believed in Susume Tactics on PSP, possibly. And they're like, we're gonna put our name on a game.
And then it did so well that they never published a game again.
We're gonna put it on Susume Tactics. Here it is.
Right.
All right. Now we get into the section of the show that's just entitled Mystery.
Yeah.
So
we did the history, so this is the mystery.
Oh no!
That's right. It rhymes.
I can't wait to see what's in the mystery box.
Yeah. This was what I thought I was looking at. So in an interview with Gamasutra, a guy named Masa Agarida, who was the vice president of Tose USA at the time. So this was sometime
American USA.
Yeah, before before they moved out of American California. The quote was, "We're always behind the scenes. Our policy is not to have a vision. Instead, we follow our customers' visions. Most of the time, we refuse to put our name on the games, not even staff names."
I'm just imagining Tose headquarters looking like a scene out of 1984. Like everyone's in gray and brown, and on the wall it says, "Company policy, we have no vision." Just like...
I found the interview from Famitsu, and they have pictures from within the Tose office, and it looks like a really bright and happy place to work, and everybody looks like they're having a good time. But all the quotes I'm finding just make it sound like
they're all dead inside,
right? Like it's some factory.
Well, what I guess it makes sense. I imagine if it's this thing where you work in these companies and they're like, look, we set our own contract terms. There's no grind. We don't have anything invested in these projects. We're just fulfilling our contract. If it fails after it launches, that sucks for the company I get it. It's like all of the fun of game development without any of the pressure, but also credit.
Yeah.
All
right.
I just love that. Our policy is to not have a vision.
Right? I just thought that was the weirdest shit. I had to put that in here.
What's your company policy? Well, you got to come to meetings on every Sunday. Those are mandatory, and we have no vision. Visions are not allowed.
We just find someone else's vision and just kind of cling to it for a little bit, and then when it's done, we just let it go.
I imagine interviewing new people, and they're like, "What's your vision?" And they have this big grand vision, and they're like, "Next!" And finally, they're like, "What's your vision?" And they're like, "I don't know." You're hired. Get in there.
You're one of us.
Get in there and don't be creative.
Right. So, and the thing is, a lot of their games, they do contribute quite a bit. So clearly they are adding a lot of creativity.
I mean, we're making fun.
Right.
But they clearly love games, and they've worked on a lot of good projects that we know of.
Yeah, some of them. I found on Tose's English website, they said that they've been in the development of approximately 2,300 home video game software and mobile content titles.
Holy shit. That has to make them one of the most prolific development houses on the planet.
Yeah, and that was a few years ago that was last update.
I can't even imagine that massive companies have that many games.
Right?
Even remotely close. If you told me Nintendo had 500 games that they directly developed, even then I'd be like, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that's a staggering number for one company that most people haven't heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I was mentioning that Famitsu article that I had found. They talked to an unnamed employee.
His parents didn't have a vision when they named him. So
right, and had no vision, so he didn't get a name. Also, they couldn't see him because they had no vision.
Right.
So this was back in 2017. This article was from. And the employee told them that the contracts they have with the publisher forbid them from identifying all of the games they made. And some of the staff's identities can't be made public as it may jeopardize that information.
That's
because
crazy.
Some of those names may have been in credits.
Right.
A lot of the times as pseudonyms. But because of that, they can't reveal that they work at Tose because that would reveal that they worked on that game.
It always makes me wonder, because every now... I assume regular humans don't watch the credits to games, but I do, and I know you do. And I read a lot of the names, and every now and then you'll see a name that's like development assistance by Poofy, and you're like, what? Who is Poofy? And now I'm wondering, is it Tose people?
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see names that just look fake, and you'll see like a dozen Japanese names in a row, and then John Hardpower, and you're like, I don't think that's his real name.
John Hardpower is the lead in my Captain N reboot. What's your name? John Hardpower.
Right.
And who might you be? Oh, I'm Tetris Block.
I am Game Boy. We're in a mega pickle, Captain Hardpower.
Oh my God. Anyway. Oh, Captain Hardpower.
I don't know if that's an actual name I've read. I'm pretty sure I just made it up. But you get the point that I'm going with.
Right. Good old John Hardpower. John Hardpower was a regular grown-ass man when he got sucked into his Nintendo. Wow! For anyone that hasn't seen the intro to Captain N, they describe what happened.
Yeah, and I gotta say, there's no way I could have imagined John Hardpower being described aside from regular grown-ass man. That seems like just chef's kiss perfection.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Localization assistance by John Hardpower, comma, regular grown-ass man.
Now I want to know what he looks like. So if anybody out there has any artistic vision at all, we don't want the people with no vision, just the people with vision.
Have some vision and draw John Hardpower.
Now I'm starting to think he might be an adult film star.
Definitely. Most definitely. I thought that was implied the whole time.
Anyway.
Where were we?
I don't know. We were at John Hardpower. During that same Famitsu interview, they talk about how they took a tour of the Tose office in 2017. They were allowed under NDA to see a full list of Tose's developed titles.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they couldn't name any previously unknown games that Tose hadn't previously acknowledged.
Right.
But they did say that many influential and well-known NES, Game Boy, and Super NES games were developed by Tose without anyone knowing. And the implication was that it was like major blockbuster titles that we have no idea they were in.
Oh my God. Do you think they developed Nestor's Funky Bowling?
They didn't mention Virtual Boy games, so I can't say definitively.
No!
According to an interview with the Tose management, that same interview, they said there were many times throughout the 90s where Tose's games would make up half or more of the spots on Famitsu's top 10.
Holy shit.
And there was at least one time where they filled the entire top 3.
I wonder if I don't know. It's God. Right? It just makes you wonder.
Makes you want to know, right?
You're like, how many of these games are these companies not even making?
Right. And there was a brief period of time where Tose America, when they still existed, was putting their names on games. Like there was a Nightmare Before Christmas game that Disney put out on, I want to say DS or GBA. And if you look at the back of the box, there's actually a Tose logo there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the very, very few times you'll see it on a physically produced game.
Right.
But then they got rid of that real quick. They were not. They were not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I think
people
that was
started
part
noticing.
Right. I think that's part of why they killed off the U.S. branch was because Japan was like, I don't know what the fuck you thought you were doing, but that's not going to happen.
Right.
But in more recent years, Tose is far more likely to participate in just making components of a game rather than an entire game. So they'll make just the CG or just the music or just the stage design or something like that, which honestly makes it even more difficult to pinpoint which games they've worked on. And some of the developers can list tons of non-Tose people in the credits. So you won't even know if it was one that they did or didn't work on.
Right. Well, especially whenever, I mean, these days when every video game is like a multi-million-dollar project, they farm out tons of the work. I mean, if you think Square Enix is fucking making anything anymore,
right?
I got a bridge to sell you. Like, they're like 90% of their stuff gets piecemealed out, farmed out, and then they bring it in. They have a team put it together. That's just how game development works now.
Yeah. And especially with how just massive the staff lists are that work on each of these games, there's no way one company could employ that many people.
Right.
Like hell, the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters that just recently came out, the
oh
credits
my God,
are what, 10 minutes long?
Yeah, I timed it because you told me that, and I was on stream. We watched it for 10. It was one of the more popular portions of my streaming career. We all sat there and watched the credits for 10 whole minutes.
Yeah, and they do credit Tose in there too. That is one of the many companies they credited there. So their current website lists key clients as including Bandai Namco, Capcom, From Software, Gung Ho Online, Intelligent Systems, IREM, Marvelous, Monolith Soft, Nintendo, Sega Sammy, Sony Interactive, and Square Enix. And I found an archive version of that same page that also mentioned Atlas, Disney Buena Vista, D3 Publisher, EA, Koei Tecmo, Konami, Take-Two, and THQ.
Is that literally everyone except Microsoft?
I think it's everyone but Microsoft at that point.
I think that's the only company not on that list.
Right? And even then, they might still be making games for Microsoft.
Right. They just can't say it. Yeah.
And I did see an interview with 1UP where, again, they said that when they do show up, it's just usually pseudonyms. It's very rarely that an actual Tose staff member's name will be there. And sometimes the company itself is under a pseudonym in the credits. So we just don't know what they have and haven't done.
Yeah. So
we do know some things they've done.
Yeah, let's talk about the things we do know. And because even this list is stuff we know they worked on and stuff that it's pretty well assumed that they worked on.
Right. Yeah, so there's been some sleuths online that have kind of narrowed it down and figured out what some of those pseudonyms are and trace things back to them.
It should be clear that, one, this list is mostly assumptions and evidence.
Right.
Also, we don't know, even the projects that we do know pretty sure that they worked on, we don't know what all they did or didn't do. We have no idea. I mean, we could list one of these games and all they did was provide art for one character sprite. You know, we don't know.
Now, the first few, actually, they are credited with having made outright. So we know these first, I want to say 5, actually.
Yeah. And the first one here is what got me noticing them, because I was like, I feel like I've seen them, and I clicked it, and I was like, oh, they made a ton of stuff. I think? Maybe?
Right.
Let's start with products for Nintendo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the most prominent being the legendary Starfy. Tose co-owns the rights to that franchise. They are credited with their logo in the game's splash screens. It is one of the very, very, very few projects that Tose has any kind of ownership over. And so that is one of the few things that we can say definitively they definitely have done Starfy. And then a few others that they did for Nintendo that we know definitively is the Game & Watch Gallery series that they did for the Game Boys. Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, which was the second game on the Game Boy. The NES and Game Boy ports of Tetris 2.
Ah, now we know who to blame.
Right? Also, Kirby's Block Ball is another one we know definitively they did. The rest of these, I think they might be credited for, but we don't know how much, if whatever they did.
Right.
So we have Super Princess Peach, Paper Mario Color Splash, and Paper Mario the Origami King. WarioWare Gold and WarioWare Get It Together, the new one that just came out. They may have also worked on some older WarioWare games, and we have no idea. The Famicom Detective Club remakes for Switch were credited to Tose, as was the Switch port of Breath of the Wild, which did pretty well.
Yeah, I really wonder.
Yeah,
how much of Nintendo's catalog is Tose?
Yeah, how much they contributed to it. Yeah,
and I know that longtime Nintendo fans are a bit more tenacious than a lot of other fans. So it could just be that people have just connected the dots more with Nintendo projects because people get really passionate and excited about Nintendo trivia and stuff like this. So it kind of makes me wonder, but it really seems like a lot of Nintendo stuff that is not, well, I was going to say that isn't like direct mainline entries in their series, is like their offshoot stuff seems to be Tose, but then Breath of the Wild is. Although if they were just doing the Switch port, I could see Nintendo getting far enough in the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild and being like, look, we got to release this on the Wii U. We said we were going to.
Right.
But we also want it on the NX, as it was known at the time, and they just farmed it out to Tose.
Yeah. So that's that's a big project, too. That had to have been worth just a massive amount of money.
Because the other thing to keep in mind is that in addition to just by sheer numbers that we know, Tose being one of, if not the most prolific game company on Earth.
Right.
They're also possibly one of the most critically acclaimed just by sheer volume.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
And plenty of their games get shit on. And we've seen that in the past with a lot of their NES and Super NES games that they are credited with. People have shit on them a little bit, not as much as some other companies like Micronix, but they did get a bit of guff back in the day for some ports that they kind of phoned in. But I wonder if that's because those jobs were like their quick making money jobs, while they put more effort into the games that they didn't even get credit for because those games were good enough that the publishers wanted credit for themselves.
Right.
So it's tough to say.
Let's talk Square Enix and Square Enix.
Right. So they did all of the Super NES to PS1 ports of Final Fantasy 4 through 6 and Chrono Trigger.
Oof.
They did the Game Boy Color Dragon Quest games.
Those were good.
Those were good. They did the WonderSwan and GBA Final Fantasy games.
Also, great job.
Yeah. They did the PSP Star Ocean and Valkyrie Profile ports, which were all very good.
Yeah.
They did the 3DS port of Dragon Quest VIII, at least part of it. They contributed obviously to the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
They are almost fully responsible for the Dragon Quest Monster series, apparently.
Oh, really? Well, they need to get off their asses and make a Switch one already.
Yeah. They also are responsible for all of the Rocket Slime games.
I think that I don't like Dragon Quest games. I think I like Tose Dragon Quest games because I don't know. It's just a thought.
Rocket Slime's really good. I can't fault you there. And
until 11, DQ8 was my favorite DQ.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's
And we don't know if or how much of DQ11 they worked on. If they did.
And it looks like they did the good Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, they did. They did Lightning Returns, which was the third Final Fantasy 13.
Oh, right. There was fucking 3 of them. Which one was the good one?
Well, 13.2 is often considered to be the high point. But
3 of them. Good God.
The third one, at least Tri-Ace and Tose worked on it. Presumably other parts of Square Enix as well. Tose also did World of Final Fantasy. They did that entirely on their own and are credited for it. Some games they made for the Resident Evil series. They did Gun Survivor. They did Zero. At least the GameCube port of Zero, possibly the N64 original as well that never was released. They were also responsible for the GameCube ports of Resident Evil 2, 3, and Code Veronica. At least the ones that we know of.
Right.
They also did Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins on PSP. That was Tose. The PC, PS3, Wii U, and Xbox 360 ports of Resident Evil Revelations was Tose. The Game Boy Color Metal Gear Solid game, known in Japan as Ghost Babel, was Tose.
I have that game. It's mediocre.
A game. It is a game. And then a bunch of NES and Super NES Dragon Ball games the Bandai put out were all actually made by Tose.
Yeah.
And then just so much else. I was just getting exhausted looking at the list of even presumed titles.
Right. Let's talk impact and legacy. And the answer is a lot, and that's all we can really say.
Right. Yeah, we don't know how much or what specifically, but a lot.
I suspect that, 100 years from now, when video game development is this well-documented, well-researched academic field of study,
right.
Tose is going to be retroactively looked back on in an extremely different light if it ever comes out what all they did and worked on and contributed. I can see like 100 years from now, people being like, oh yeah, Tose, and then there's these other companies like Nintendo and Sony and stuff that did the hardware crap.
Right. Yeah,
I could see that.
It's hard
happening.
to say, and the thing is, we don't know how long those NDAs are in effect. Maybe at some point in the future, Tose can finally come out and be like, "Well, these are the products that we worked on, and we want to say this in order to help drum up additional business for us."
Well, but then the question becomes: when you've worked on almost 2,500 games as of 5 years ago, anyway, probably more than that now. It seems like they are the de facto go-to for any Japanese company looking to get some work done. So I don't know. Even if the NDAs are up, I don't know that Tose would want to say anything then.
Yeah, they might not even need to because they are clearly still getting consistent business. Why mess that up?
Yeah. So I don't know that we will ever know in our lifetime what all Tose has contributed to video gaming.
Seriously. It's
what they continue like, and that's the weirdest part is they're still doing it now.
Yeah, they never stopped, and they're still going, and potentially at a faster pace than they ever have before. Especially now that they have also moved into heavy mobile game development. One of the things that the guy said in the Famitsu interview was, if things continued on the pace they were going, he expects their game development just for Android and iOS to equal the amount of development they did on literally everything else in their history within the next few years.
Holy cow. And I will say that we don't like to think of it that way. But here in 20, 30, 40 years, people are going to look back on mobile gaming the way we look back on NES and SNES games. And Tose could be at the top of the list of, they're the mobile game company, as we've come to find out.
Right. And it's even harder to preserve a lot of that mobile stuff. So we only really have word of mouth on a lot of them. Yeah. So it'll be curious to see how that specifically is looked back on, and if we ever even find out what they contributed to it, if it's just Japanese ports or if it was a lot more that we don't know about.
Yeah. I like to imagine that we give a lot of answers on the show, just in a general sense.
Yeah.
But this week we definitely are ending with more questions than anything.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But the information is just not out there, So keep an eye out. We'll just have
to wait till he's not under NDA and ask John Hardpower about it.
That must be it. Captain Hardpower, excuse me.
It did find one other company that kind of works the same way as a company called Next Entertainment. Which was another Japanese shadow developer, essentially. And they worked as a competitor to Tose, and they shut down in 2016. So I have no idea if there are other major prolific Japanese firms like Tose. If there are, they're not getting the attention Tose is, and likely don't have anywhere near the catalog that Tose
Well, you know what else isn't getting the attention Tose is our Patreon, which you can visit at patreon.com/retrowarriors.
However, unlike Tose, we're willing to acknowledge our patrons.
Yeah, and we're slightly less prolific. I'm just going to put it out there. For now, we'll catch up. All right? You can get uncut versions of this show. You can get Talking Wizards. It's a good time. We would appreciate your support. Also, rating and reviewing helps the show as well. But we do want to thank the following specific patrons for their kind donations to our Patreon campaign, starting with Christopher Britt
and El Malaguero,
Dave Nelson,
Chris Hickson,
Harry Pry,
Brandon Johnson,
French Dresser's Bathhouse of Pain,
Alex,
Nick M.,
and Retro Gamer Randomness.
Are all the people we want to thank for helping out with the show, and we do appreciate them, and we appreciate you for listening to the show. that we just did, and
Yes.
it is now over.
Oh.
Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.